some people don't fail because they're careless or incapable. They fail because they're intelligent. Not loudly or dramatically, but quietly. The kind of failure that doesn't look like collapse from the outside, yet slowly erodes momentum, clarity, and direction over time. Why this matters? We often assume intelligence is a form of protection, something that shields people from bad decisions, manipulation, burnout, and long-term failure. But intelligence has blind spots. Some of the most damaging psychological traps don't target the uninformed. They target the analytical, the self-aware, and the capable. These traps don't look like mistakes. They look like responsibility, ambition, and depth. That's why smart people usually don't notice them until years later, when progress has slowed, motivation has faded, and life feels heavier than it should. This isn't about stupidity. It's about the patterns the human brain falls into when it thinks too well. One, overthinking as a substitute for action. Smart people naturally think before acting, and most of the time that's an advantage. But there's a point where thinking stops being preparation and becomes avoidance. The brain gets stuck optimizing imaginary futures instead of testing reality. Conversations are replayed that haven't happened, systems are planned that never get implemented, and ideas are refined endlessly without ever leaving the mind. From the inside, it feels productive. From the outside, nothing moves. Psychologically, this happens because thinking provides a sense of control without risk. Action, on the other hand, exposes you to failure, judgment, and irreversible outcomes. Thinking keeps all possibilities open, and the brain prefers safety over progress. Over time, intelligence turns into a brake instead of an engine. 2. Identity entanglement. Many smart people quietly build their identity around being intelligent, not explicitly, but subtly. They see themselves as the thoughtful one, the rational one, the person who understands things others don't. The problem is that identities are fragile. Once intelligence becomes part of who you are, being wrong stops feeling informative and starts feeling threatening. To protect identity, the brain avoids environments where failure is visible, dismisses feedback instead of testing it, and stays within familiar zones of competence. Growth requires temporary incompetence, and identity resists that. This is how intelligent people slowly stop learning without realizing they've plateaued. 3. Burnout caused by invisible pressure. Smart people are often trusted with more responsibility. They handle complexity well, solve problems others avoid, and rarely complain, so systems reward them with more cognitive load. That means more decisions, more accountability, and more expectations. Unlike physical labor, mental strain doesn't signal exhaustion clearly. There's no sharp pain or obvious failure, just slower thinking, irritability, emotional numbness, and a loss of curiosity. Burnout isn't a sudden collapse, it's gradual erosion. Intelligent people are especially vulnerable because they normalize strain as part of competence. 4. The illusion of control. Understanding systems creates confidence. When you understand incentives, psychology, and risk, it's easy to believe outcomes are controllable. But many systems aren't responsive to intelligence alone. Markets, organizations, bureaucracies, and social hierarchies respond to timing, power, leverage, and randomness. Smart people often overestimate how much control thinking gives them and underestimate how much friction reality contains. When outcomes don't match effort, the instinct is to think harder instead of changing strategy. The result is exhaustion without progress. 5. Intellectualization of emotions. Smart people are good at explaining things, including their own emotions. Instead of feeling anxiety, they analyze it. Instead of feeling grief, they contextualize it. Instead of feeling anger, they rationalize it away. This creates emotional distance, but not resolution. Emotions that aren't felt don't disappear. They go underground and reappear later as chronic tension, disrupted sleep, loss of motivation, or unexplained irritability. The mind stays sharp, but the system underneath slowly degrades. This isn't emotional intelligence, it's emotional deferral. 6. Optimization paralysis. Intelligent people value efficiency and want the best tools, the best plan, and the optimal approach. So they delay starting until conditions feel right. but reality rarely stays stable long enough for optimization to pay off. Progress tends to reward early movement, feedback loops, and imperfect execution. Optimizing before acting creates fragility because when the plan inevitably breaks, the entire system collapses instead of adapting. Progress doesn't require the best path. It requires a path that moves. 7. Social isolation through mismatch. Many intelligent people experience subtle social friction, not rejection, but mismatch. They process faster, think in abstractions, and question assumptions others accept. Over time, this creates quiet distance rather than obvious loneliness. So they retreat inward, rely more on internal dialogue, and engage less socially. But humans regulate stress through connection. Without that regulation, rumination increases, perspective narrows, and self-criticism intensifies. Intelligence without social grounding often turns inward, and not always in healthy ways. 8. Confusing awareness with progress. Awareness feels powerful. Understanding patterns, recognizing biases, and seeing psychological traps can feel like movement. Smart people often mistake insight for change, telling themselves they know why something happens or understand the system now. But the nervous system doesn't update through explanation, it updates through experience. Without repeated behavioral change, insight becomes a loop rather than a lever. Why these traps exist? These traps exist because the human brain evolved for survival, not optimization. Thinking is more energy efficient than action. Avoiding risk kept ancestors alive, and status within groups mattered more than experimentation. Intelligence amplifies these tendencies by giving the brain better tools to justify inaction, defend identity, and rationalize stagnation. The mind becomes extremely good at protecting itself from short-term discomfort, even when that protection causes long-term decay. None of these traps are dramatic. They don't announce themselves or feel dangerous. They feel reasonable, which is exactly why they work. Intelligence doesn't ruin people. Unexamined patterns do. And the most damaging ones are the traps that feel like strengths. Not because they're malicious, but because they're comfortable. And comfort over time is one of the most effective ways to stop moving forward.